you for coming tonight, and thank you for having me here. So, as he said, my name is Lias Heisig, and I'm a transformational coach and founder of BEMS Reset. BEMS stands for Behavioral, Emotional, Mental, and Spiritual. And BEMS Reset is a telecoaching program for men and women who struggle with emotional addiction, which usually leads to anxiety, depression, substance abuse issues. And so I work with people in helping them create a different mindset that will take them away from that mentality. And so I teach them how to reset those BEMS patterns and how to retrain their brain so they can create a better mindset or superior mindset that will empower them to start getting better results. So let me go ahead and get started with our presentation. And by the end of the night, if anybody is interested in learning more about the information that I'm going to present here tonight, I have a gift for you, and it's absolutely free, zero commitment. So hopefully you'll enjoy the presentation. All right, so two objectives that I have for tonight's presentation. And the first one is that by the end of this presentation, that you will have a better understanding of what emotional addiction is and how it may be impacting your results. And if it is, that you go home knowing how to change those results and start getting better results. Now, I've seen some of the videos that you guys, some of the classes that you've had here, and there's a lot of very good tools that you've been given. And sometimes those tools work better when the mindset is different, right? So that's the part that I offer here tonight. It's got nothing to do with creating or promoting your business online. It's got to do with yourself, right? All right, so before I get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my background and why I do what I do. So I am a recovering alcoholic and addict. I've been sober for 15 years. But before I sobered up, right, I was a horrible, chronic alcoholic. I started drinking when I was 12 because at that age I was already conflicted with deep emotions of that sense of abandonment and despair and hopelessness. So I started drinking because I found comfort in drinking. And the drinking led to drugs, and the drugs led to self-destruction. And so that way I lived for 23 years. By the time I reached 35, I was a chronic alcoholic. My body had taken a toll. It was very, very sick. I had reached a terminal state of health. So I was dying, I was miserable, and I was ready to tap out. For some reason in 2004, some inexplicable experience happened, which to this day I'm still not able to explain what that was or what it was like. But some people call that a spiritual experience. And whatever it's called, it was very powerful. So powerful that it pulled me out of that rut. And from that day forward, I never had another drink again. And I never used drugs again. And I never considered suicide ever again. So that's how powerful that was. But that doesn't happen to everybody, right? Yeah. So it was, I understand that it was kind of like a special case, if you will. But nonetheless, it left me feeling feeling this deep sense of gratitude. And because there was no person that I could thank, like sometimes when a doctor saves your life, you go to the doctor and say, thank you, thank you. There was nobody there that I could thank. So the only thing that came up to my mind was I could start helping other people get better, right? and kind of like change their lives and turn that ship around and start thriving. So that's what I did. I started working with alcoholics and helping them stay sober. Shortly after that, I started working with non-alcoholics. And this is what I discovered in that process. What I discovered was that when we take away the drinking alcohol or using of drugs, you are left with a set of thoughts, emotions, and feelings, right? That's your mindset. And I realized that whether you were an alcoholic or not, people were having the same problems. They were still experiencing anxiety, depression, some kind of dependence on some sort of substance like medications, prescription medications, and so on. So everybody was displaying the same problems, right? And everybody was feeling the same way. So the alcoholics were drinking alcohol, but the non-alcoholics were drinking their emotions, so to speak. And I came to realize that after years and years of doing this and living that way, the non-alcoholics had also become addicted to their emotions. And this is what I later called emotional addiction, which is what I teach today. So once I figured this out, I continued to work with people for the next 10 years. And I was doing great. I was helping. I was truly making an impact. But then in 2010, I saw the ad from the Army that they were hiring people all the way up to 42. So at age 41 and a half, I joined the Army. And so I went from being the vice president of accounting at a mid-sized company in Central California to being a fuzzy private in the Army, right, entry level. And the reason was because I couldn't pass the PT test, but they took me anyways, right? I could only do 3 push-ups, and there were like halfway push-ups, but they took me anyway, and I was happy. Now, I did that because that was my childhood dream. That's what I wanted to do since I remember being alive. I wanted to protect people. And I knew that I was going to take a significant pay cut, right? But that didn't matter to me. I was happy that I was going to go realize my dream, and I was very healthy now because my health had become better. So off I went, and while I was in active duty, I continued to help people, active duty soldiers and their family members, with the same thing, right? Emotional addiction. 2013, I received orders to deploy to Afghanistan. And I thought that because I had been through all that really harsh life, that I was ready for anything, right? There I go, boots on the battlefield. And war was something that I couldn't even begin to wrap my head around. It was such an experience that movies don't even come close to what that is, right? So it changed me. When I came back in 2014, that's when it hit me. And I realized that the woman that left was not the same woman that came back. And something had changed in a bad way. And for the next 18 months, I became isolated, and I did everything I could to try to fix myself. By then, I was already a credentialed counterintelligence agent. I held a top secret clearance, and I went on very high-speed missions. And I did things in the Army that most soldiers don't even know that we do. And I would get this deep sense of gratitude and reward from doing what I did, because I knew that at the end of the day, I was helping, contributing to save lives and protect our nation. And all of this was being threatened by the way I was functioning now. And I couldn't take it anymore in 2015. I walked into the behavioral health clinic in Fort Meade, and I asked for help. And my worst nightmare became true that day, right? And they said, your diagnosis is complex PTSD and memory lapses. Sometimes I couldn't even remember who I was. And I would get lost leaving work, and I lived right outside base. Sometimes I would get lost inside base, because I just couldn't remember where I was or who I was. So I was devastated, totally devastated by this diagnosis, because this is my dream right now slipping away from my hands, and I was powerless to stop it or change anything. So fast forward to November 2018, not very long ago, less than a year, and I was medically retired and separated from the Army. And the entire month of December, I did nothing. Right? That's all I could do. And then I fell into that negative self-talk, like, I'm too old to start anything new. Who's gonna take me? Who's gonna hire me like this, right? I couldn't go anywhere because I couldn't be around people. My life was done, and I didn't know what to do. So in January of this year, life hit me even harder. Bitter blow, right? And I became homeless. There was a situation in my house where I needed to either leave and become homeless, by choice, or stay and compromise my sobriety. I could not live with that, right? I wasn't willing to compromise my sobriety. So I left, and that day I became homeless by choice. So now I'm out of the streets. I only have money for a couple days at a cheap motel by the airport, BWI. And the VA can't really do anything because I'm not even in their system because I just got separated, right? So they're still processing my separation. And I don't have the disability compensation either because they're still processing that. So I'm at zero, right? And I'm sitting by the third day, I'm sitting at a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot. And that day, I simply let it go. I let it go because there was just nothing else I could do. Just a few hours later, the VA called me and said, we found a shelter for you. I went and checked in. The next day, I got another friend who called me, my ex-boss from the command that I was assigned to. And she offered me to stay at her house until I could find a place. But a week later, I actually found a room, right? And I was happy with that little room. In that room is when my life changed for the better, right? Because in that room, that's when I surrendered. And I just handed over the outcome of my life to something greater than myself, whatever that was that I had experienced 15 years prior. That's what I did, right? And within minutes, clarity started to come in. And I started to get clarity on what to do, right? And so from that room, sitting in that little room, I asked for the courage to take action, right? I was afraid to leave anywhere and go anywhere. And I decided to go back to AA meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous, which I had stayed away for 5 years because I couldn't be in crowds or around people. I went back there and reconnected with my tribe. I volunteered to bring AA meetings to county jails and mental health institutions. I still do that today. And I took an inventory of my own life, right, for the past 5 years. And by doing that, I got clarity on the things that I needed to keep, which were good things about me that I wanted to keep. And the things that were just useless anymore, I had to make the decision to let them go and change the things that weren't working for me anymore. So I applied all those years of experience and knowledge that I had acquired by working with other people. I applied it to myself, and I began to heal from the panic attacks, the anxiety, and that constant fear that I always lived in. And little by little, that began to change. I figured, okay, so now that I've done this, what is the next step? So I hired a business coach who would show me how to start a business, doing what I know to do, which is help people, right? That's what I've been doing for 15 years. And do it online, because I was still afraid to go out and meet people, right? So I did that. I started this business. I registered the business with the state of Maryland, and I launched it. I created my website, which a business coach will guide you through all that, right? They kind of teach you all that. That's why they charge for what they do. But it was worth it. Every penny was worth it. And my husband and I reconnected. My husband is here, by the way. He's in the back. So we reunited about 3 months later. And we made the decision that we would never allow anything or anyone ever to bring chaos to our home. And our home is now a peaceful place. And it's my sacred place where I can feel safe. And from the safety of that space, another inspiration came through. And I figured I can help hundreds of people get better, come out of this. Whenever they feel that there's not another card under their sleeve, I can show them that yes, it is possible. I did it, it happened to me, and in the process I've met a lot of people who have also done the same. So my story is not unique, right? So it is possible to transform your life and begin getting what you want. So if out of this, and of course I also joined some networking groups where I've met very influential people, people that inspire me and support me and support my goals. So networking is essential. So that's it's a good thing that's why you're here, right? So if anything in my story, that's my story pretty much in a nutshell right there, a few bullets. If anything resonates with you, I'm here to tell you tonight that if you have ever felt that way, where you feel like there's no way out, I'm here to tell you that it is possible. It doesn't matter how old you are or what you've been through. It is possible, right, to transform, turn the ship around, and take a new direction. All right, so that's what I'd like to share with you tonight. And so that process is what I call the 5 steps to upgrade your mindset. So by show of hand, who here has ever met somebody like this? What's that person, right? Have you met somebody like that? Yeah, right? It's like, I don't have the experience. The second one was me. I'm too old. No one's gonna want me. Who's gonna hire me? Look at me. Or I'm not techy enough or savvy enough. Or I'm too much of this or I'm too much of that. And the negative self-talk just goes on, right? And a lot of people have been through that, so it's not an uncommon thing. So today, I'm going to start with the fundamental principles of the human experience so that we can understand how our mind develops certain thinking and feeling patterns that sometimes keep us trapped in a cycle and we keep getting the same results. And there we go, and we would try to work harder and we're still getting the same results, right? And we follow the instructions that whatever guru wants to give us, and we keep getting the same results. And the problem is that as long as the underlying problem is still there, then whatever you do on the surface is still going to continue to bring in the same results, right? So the first fundamental here, the first principle is the principle of thought energy. Thoughts are just energy. That's what it is. It's energy. And this energy of thought, I'm going to give you a lot of analogies because there's not enough time for me to explain everything. But if I give you an analogy, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I get it. All right, so I'm going to use a lot of that. So the thought energy is almost like a clay that you can pretty much take it and shape it into whatever you want. And that is exactly what the mind does with that energy, right? It takes thoughts, whatever they are, and it creates something. And the mind is almost like the projector, right? That whatever the contents of my presentation is, it projects it onto a screen. It needs a backdrop, right? And the backdrop is your consciousness. Consciousness is what the mind uses to project whatever it created. Let's say it created a movie based on the thoughts that you're generating, or a story. And now it's projecting the movie. But it will not get your attention, your awareness, unless something powerful, something strong enough gets your attention, right? So if I punch you in the face right now, that's going to get your attention, right? Because there was some type of feeling about that, right? First of all, you're not going to like it, so that's going to get your attention. So what the mind does, it taps into your feelings, and feelings are like the special effects of a movie. So when it connects the thought and it pairs it with your feelings, right, then it's creating real special effects. And it adds the special effects to that movie that it just created, so that when it projects the movie onto the screen of consciousness, you become aware, because now you're experiencing that content through your senses. And as you receive this information through your senses, it gets your attention, right? And now those feelings, right, now they've been activated. You put the thought and the feeling together, and what you get is an emotion. The emotion is the result of those two marrying together, right? So whether it's a thought or it's a feeling, they're both energy. So emotion is pretty much energy in motion. And so now this emotion is going to travel to the brain through the vagus nerve. The brain receives that order and says, oh, here. So this signal has to do with some kind of stress, a stressful emotion, let's say anger. So the brain produces chemicals that are equal to that emotion. And if the emotion is anger or fear or any negative emotion, it's going to produce those chemicals, right? Or it's going to cause the glands in the body to produce those chemicals. And now this chemical is being distributed throughout the entire body. And that's about 30 million or 30 billion cells that makes up our body. And every single cell gets a piece of that chemical. So when the process is complete, then you go back to thinking, the mind making a movie, feeling, you get the contents of the movie through your senses. Now you produce an emotion. The emotion goes to the brain produces the chemicals, and the chemicals go to your body. So if you keep up that cycle, the body itself physically becomes addicted to that cycle. So essentially it's becoming addicted to your emotions. Whatever it is, the quality of thoughts that you produce on a regular basis, whatever your thinking patterns are, right, that is going to be the movie that your mind is going to create. And based on that, those are the chemicals that the brain is going to produce. And that chemical is what the body becomes addicted to. All right, so before you know it, you're hooked on that cycle. In the same way a heroin addict is hooked on heroin, so are we on our emotions, right? So that's very important to understand, because over the years, that is what becomes your personal reality. Whatever you're thinking is what's holding your attention, and that is what you reflect outside of you, and that becomes your personal reality. So you continue to do that over the years, that after a while of hearing and feeling and thinking something, right, it becomes the norm. So now this new norm becomes your truth. And as you accumulate some of these truths, these become your belief system. Belief is when you are absolutely convinced and sure that something is true, and that is a belief. So now this cycle that is producing your personal reality in your outer environment, now this has become your truth. And it's been happening for so long that you've come to believe that that is your life. And that's pretty much the fundamental principles of the human experience. And every single human being on earth functions this way. The difference is that some function or some choose to purposely produce some of those positive emotions and feelings and thoughts, and therefore their personal reality is a lot better, right? And others, such as myself, we choose to go the other way, right? And then we get trapped in that cycle. So if you're wondering, where are these thoughts coming from, right? Because the mind gets them and it makes the movie or the story. But they gotta come from somewhere, right? So I have this little visual right here to kind of like assist you with another analogy, right? So we humans are pretty much kind of like a brand new computer when you buy it. When you buy a new computer, the hard drive is pretty much clean, and the only information there is the pre-installed programs for the manufacturer, right? And those are necessary for the computer to function, right? And that becomes the operating system. So we are the same way, very similar. When we are born, the subconscious mind has no data in there, right? Just the pre-installed programs that are required for the machine to function. In a human, this is what it looks like, right? Respiratory, digestive, nervous system, and so on. And those are the pre-installed systems or programs in our subconscious, right? And they have to be in the subconscious because they need to run automatically. If we become aware of that, we wouldn't go anywhere. It's too much work, right? To remember every second for the heart to palpitate, that's too much. So that's where they need to be stored. And so you would customize your computer to your liking. Same thing with life, kind of customize your life to your liking. Whatever you want to experience in life, that's how you customize your computer, right? So that's how we are similar with a computer. So how do we fill up that hard drive? Pretty much, during the first 7 years of our lives, all the information that we receive, absorb, or perceive through our senses comes from the outer environment, right? That comes from our parents, our teachers, our neighbors, siblings, school, TV, the community, the playground, anywhere. Whatever those experiences are, everything that you have experienced in your life will be downloaded and recorded into the hard drive, which is the subconscious, right? So the environment has a lot to do. Whatever that environment is has a lot to do with how you are going to respond to life later on. And it becomes recorded in the hard drive through the process of repetition, right? And that's how we learn how to walk and talk and all that. We needed to do something repeatedly, and then it becomes ingrained in the brain, in the mind, in the subconscious. By the time we're 7, those programs that have been running for a little bit, they begin to become automatic, right? Because we're kind of like getting a little bit kind of like the same all the time, right? The same family, same house, same siblings, etc. So some of those become automated, and they begin to run automatically. By the time we hit 7, we begin to develop the analytical mind. And that part of the mind is responsible for assigning meaning to whatever information has been stored in the hard drive for the last 7 years. Right? So it assigns meaning, and it kind of like makes compartments of where everything should go. And after the age of 12, or anything that starts coming in after the analytical mind is done assigning meaning to everything else, that it's already there, now it has a blueprint, a template of how it should operate. And so any new information coming in from your environment will receive its meaning, and it will be filed in the compartments that the mind determined should be filed, right? And that happens between the ages of 12 and 19 as a difficult part of our lives, right? That's when we become teenagers. And so as we continue to get more of those same experiences that we've been getting for a long time, those continue to reinforce the meaning that has been assigned to the information in the hard drive. And that's how we develop our belief system. And before we know it, we have all these patterns. And there are many, but I have been able to kind of like categorize them into 4 areas. And those are behavioral, emotional, mental, and spiritual patterns, right? And that's what we know as our human experience so far. So here are a couple examples of 2 types of personalities. And there's a lot in between, but I'm giving you the 2 extremes just to give you an idea. So personality type number 1, if the child, when growing up, more often than not experience these kind of emotions, more often than not, then most likely this child will become a fairly balanced personality. If the child from personality type number 2, more often than not or repeatedly, was constantly exposed to this type of experiences, then most likely that child becomes a fairly unbalanced personality, and that is what we know as emotional trauma. And emotional trauma is what will cause us to develop these unhealthy Ben's habits, right? And there you have it again, right? Behavioral, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And then as we develop these habits, then we engage in these types of activities. And those becomes our habits, right? So we go into, we become judgmental, we self-neglect, and we forget that we are also humans and that we also deserve attention and love, right? And this is a big one, because at some point, some of us begin to think that I don't deserve X, Y, or Z because I'm a sinner, I'm a bad person, right? So I don't deserve anything. And so on, and that becomes the story of my life. So these unhealthy Ben's habits are what create the mindset that we operate under. So depending on what those are, that is what becomes the mindset, right? And if nothing in there kind of, is inspiring to acquire or to seek out better experiences, to get better results, then you will become trapped in that cycle. So here's the redundant cycle, and that is that the repetition of those unhealthy patterns become the programs in your subconscious that run automatically, because it's been happening for so long, for 40 plus years, right? And I say that because I know everybody here is over 40. So for over 40 years, been in that cycle of thinking and feeling the same way, right? So now it's become programs in the subconscious, and they run automatically. They don't need your approval or anything. You don't even have to be aware of them, right? They're just running all the time. Now that thinking and feeling pattern reinforces the programs in the subconscious. And depending on the type of programs, that's the type of thoughts that your creative mind is constantly going to receive as the clay that it uses to create your outer reality. So happy and positive thoughts create happy movies, right? Or a happy story. Any stressful or negative thoughts are going to create a sad movie, right? Or a horror story, depending on whatever you want to create, right? So if the story is positive, that is a story of empowerment and abundance. And that is the story that you can create. And that's what I'm here to talk about, right? But how you go about creating that type of story. And if it's very negative, then you will continue to create more stories of victimization. That was me, that's why I put that there. A story of lack and limitation and so on. And just to recap, the subconscious mind runs the automatic programs in the background. The analytical mind continues to assign meaning to anything that you continue to receive through your senses. And the conscious mind, its job is to create. So really, this is where your meat and potatoes are. And that is the part of your brain or the part of your mind that needs some work, right? It needs to be retrained so it can begin to have better experiences. So as I mentioned earlier, emotional addiction is the pairing of your thoughts with your feelings. Those create an emotion, right, which cause the brain to produce these chemicals. And as you continuously produce these chemicals, whether it's these or that, right, that's what the body is going to crave. So here's kind of like the human experience in a very childish picture, right? So 95% of all your experiences and your behaviors and everything you know yourself to be lies in the subconscious. That's where everything is stored. 95%. You're not aware of 95% of who you are. And only 5% is the conscious mind. And this big chunk over here is constantly sending those thoughts to the conscious mind so that it can create the story, right? And depending on what's in there, those are the kind of thoughts that we get. The mind, however, sits on the soul. And your soul also sends signal to the creative mind. But the creative mind has already, because of all this, has already become kind of like a bucket full of murky water, right? And it's so murky that if you had something good floating in there, you're probably not going to see it. And that's where certain practices come in practices such as self-observation, meditation, or yoga, or anything that helps your mind kind of settle the excessive amount of thoughts that are being bombarded from the subconscious, right? And what causes the subconscious to over bombard with those thoughts? Your body. Because your body is now addicted to those chemicals. So when a few minutes or a few hours or a few days have gone by, it needs another fix, right? So it's going to influence the mind, the subconscious mind. It's going to instigate it so that it begins to remember the stories, the events in my past, some of them traumatic, right? So that those old familiar feelings begin to come up, right? And produce those thoughts so that my mind can continue to create the same story over and over. So unless you allow your mind to settle, you're not going to be able to see the signals, right, that your soul is trying to send you. That your soul can give you the guidance that you need, but you need to be able to identify those signals. You can't do it in that murky water, so it's necessary to let it settle. So in this way, we get trapped in that cycle, right? The cycle of thinking, the mind creates the story, I feel, feelings produce emotions, they go to the brain produces the chemicals, and now I've become an emotional addict, right? And then it goes back to start the same cycle, thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking. And that is the current mindset. And as long as you continue to operate in that mindset, you will continue to get the same results. So by the time we hit mid-30s, maybe 40s, we become sad. That's an acronym. We become stressed because now we're trapped in that survival response mode, right? That cycle, we're trapped in that. And that generates a lot of stress. We can become anxious or depressed because by that age, we pretty much have experienced everything that life has to offer. Everything we wanted to experience, kind of like we did it, right? Kind of like between birth and 35, 40 years old. And so all those experiences, what happens in the mind is the same thing that happens with an alcoholic. Over time, an alcoholic develops tolerance over alcohol, right? We do the same thing. Our mind does the same thing. We develop tolerance over those addictions, or over those emotions. And so now we begin to feel dull because now we can anticipate what everything feels like. We already know. We've been there, done that. We've had our heart broken many times, so we know what that is like, right? So life kind of becomes tedious, boring. And then we fall into depression. And then, to try to make us feel better, we start looking at all the things that we didn't get to do. And maybe we should have, right? Why we do that? Because the environment has told us that by age 35, you have to have accomplished the American dream. You have to have had the family, right? The spouse, the house, the car, the career, the bank account, etc. And when you look around and you don't have that, right? Then depression sets in, anxiety sets in because now you feel like you're running out of time. And that process right there is what we know as midlife crisis, right? And so in order to help ourselves feel better, we go outside in our environment and we look for experiences that are going to up the production of that chemical that the body has become addicted to. Because now we're trying to find that elation sensation that we experienced way back then when we could have had some of those experiences. And that's how we end up doing some of those things, right? We go get the fancy car to get attention. We engage in illegal relationships, or we start dating younger people, whatever it is, or we look for very extreme experiences. Anything that's going to take my attention away from that pain that I'm experiencing. And I'm going to start going to the nightclubs every weekend because I should have done that when I was young, but I didn't do it because I was busy raising a family, or I was busy being a workaholic, or I was busy being a drunk, right? So whatever it is, now it's going to be my moment to try to do something to help myself feel better. And some of us even go and join the army at almost 42. Right? That's just a joke. I'm very proud of what I did, so it's not something that I see as a bad experience. So that brings me to what we're going to talk about tonight, right? The 5 steps to upgrade your mindset. And pretty much it's these 5 steps. They are simple, but not easy. But let me show you what this looks like. Now, pretty much, in order to begin changing those patterns, we need a pattern interrupt, correct? And that means that instead of looking away from the pain or the uncomfortable feeling or sensation that certain emotions or memories bring us, instead of looking away, we are going to look at it, right? And when you feel that familiar feeling coming up, let's say procrastination, right? When you feel it coming up, begin asking these questions. Find a space in your office where you can be alone. If there's no space, go to the bathroom. Sit on the toilet without bringing your pants down. Just sit there for 5 minutes and ask yourself these questions, right? How does this make me feel? When did I feel it first? Who did I duplicate it from? Because a lot of our behaviors that are automatic, right? We actually are duplicating it from someone in our lives. A lot of times that happens. And how does it affect my life? And that's where you're going to look for those answers. How it's affected my career or vocation, my finances, my relationships, and so on. Ask those questions. Don't be afraid to ask, because nothing bad is going to happen to you. The questions don't bite, and they're not going to kill you. So asking the questions is really not a bad thing, right? And remember that what you're trying to do here is to create an interruption in that pattern. Then the next thing you want to do is acknowledge it. Acknowledge that you have this pattern, procrastination, right? And in your mind, give it a name, give it a color, a shape, create a visual of this pattern. And the reason why I'm telling you to do this, right, or I'm recommending that you do that, is because from that day forward, every time it starts to creep up, you're going to identify it quicker if you have an image attached to it, right? And now you're going to see it coming from miles away. And now you can be prepared. Introduce yourself. Let it know that you know that it knows that you're there, right? Introduce yourself. Ask the boss, right? Hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm the new boss around, and I'm here to stay. Then you're going to neutralize it. By neutralizing it, you're taking your power back, because you gave your power away to that pattern years ago. So now you're going to tell it, okay, I am the new boss. I've been away for a while, but I'm back now. And so now this joint, we're going to run it under new management. And so there's going to be a few changes around, and your services might not be needed anymore, right? Be gentle as you're doing that, Be gentle and compassionate. Because remember, the supervisor that stayed in charge 40 plus years, your ego, did its job. It kept you safe and alive, and it protected you. And it went and hired procrastination pattern so that this pattern could keep you distracted every time you felt fear or anxiety. Because if you look at procrastination, it shows up every time you experience fear. Because there's a deadline, or there's something you gotta do by a certain time, or whatever, you experience fear. And that's when procrastination shows up, right? So it did its job. It did what it was supposed to do. So don't be hard on it. And the ego did what it was supposed to do in your absence. It did its best. So you can kind of like self-punish, right? Just be gentle with it. And thank it for doing its job. Let it know that its services will no longer be needed. And now you want to release it, right? Release all these emotions that I'm gonna find by asking those questions. Whatever you find the answers to those questions, release that. And kind of like tap into a higher power or a higher energy. Some of us call it God, Allah, higher power, the universe, whatever you want to call it, right? And ask it for its support in helping you complete this task, and give it thanks for supporting you and assisting you in this process, right? And so now every time you identify one of those, right, this is the process that you're going to follow. So the next step is to begin taking courageous actions. And by courageous actions, I don't mean that you're going to go jump off of an airplane or go fight a war in the Middle East, right? Nothing like that. Courageous actions means that you're going to start taking steps towards your transformation, because you never before thought about doing that. So that is a very courageous step to do that. So now you're going to take inventory. That's probably the biggest courageous action that you can take in your life. You're going to take inventory on your life. Now don't forget, we're talking about 40 plus years, right? So don't start with 40 plus years. Start little. Start with 3, maybe top 5, the most, of the good qualities and good positive personality traits about you, the things that you like and treasure about yourself. All those very extremely happy memories that you hold in your heart. And list those. On the other side of that sheet, you're going to list your top traumatic or negative events in your life that have caused you a lot of grief, negative memories or sad memories, whatever personality traits that you're not happy with about yourself, you can put one there, or anything that you, up until this moment, have considered as a failure, right? Whatever that is, just list 5. And the next step is that you're going to cultivate elevated emotions. Because if you want something to change, you better start producing some positive emotions so that the thinking can change. The quality of thought energy is going to change. So here, you're going to take those 5 positive top things that you like about yourself and you treasure. And as you're reviewing them or remembering them, you're going to make every effort that you can to feel the good emotions that you felt when they first happened, right? Because here is where we get to apply the principle of fake it until you make it. So if you can produce positive emotions on your own, then utilize your own life, right? to kind of find inspiration to produce those elevated emotions. Another way to produce and cultivate those elevated emotions is by giving. Start donating or volunteering somewhere. Listen to a friend without the need to tell them, I'm going to fix your life. No, just listen to them. Sometimes that's all somebody needs to feel better, right? So provide those 5 minutes of uninterrupted attention and give it to them. Receive. Those of us like myself, right, since I was little, I thought that my purpose in life was to protect people. So I always had that mentality of I'm the protector, the provider, the savior, and the everything. And I am not important. And no, I don't need to receive anything from anybody because I want them to have that for themselves. So I never got in the habit of receiving. But I cheated myself by doing that. Because if we never receive, we never get to experience gratitude. When you receive, you feel grateful. So if something comes your way, whatever it may be, even a compliment, receive it. Receive it with an open mind, because that action is going to lead to cultivating an elevated emotion. Grant forgiveness. Forgiveness is a big one, guys. The only way we get to reconnect with our soul is when we grant forgiveness for all those things that we did or the things that were done to us. But regardless, whether it was one way or the other, granting forgiveness is a truly courageous action. So you're going to evoke all these positive emotions by using your own life and by creating activities, events, or circumstances in your life that allow you to feel those emotions. The next step is purpose. We need to bring purpose to our life. Because if you start doing this for no reason, then 3 days later you're going to be like, had enough, right? There's no purpose. But if you decide why you want better results, what is the big reason why you want a better life, then something changes, right? So you're going to take that same notepad and you're going to write out your altruistic why. Why do you want to do this? Because I want to help people transform their lives. That was my why. And what was my big selfish why as to why I wanted to start a business? Because I want to be able to travel several times a year, right? I want to work from home, and I want to have 6 to 8 weeks vacation. So that's my selfish why, right? But write out both. And then you're going to go down, you're going to keep writing into that notepad or journal, and you're going to write out your goals. And make sure that the goals that you begin to write out are in alignment with your purpose. Because the moment you start writing out goals that don't support your purpose, then most likely that goal is not going to be accomplished. And then you're going to go back to nothing good ever happens to me. Nothing good comes to me, right? Because the goals are not in alignment with your purpose. So make sure to keep this in mind. Have a mentor if needed, right? A family member, a friend, or hire a professional goal setter, someone that can help you do this and keep you in line with that. Find your tribe. And what I mean by that is begin surrounding yourself with people who have already accomplished what you want. And as you surround with these people, you will become inspired. Inspiration is going to open up clarity, right? And motivation. So you want to hang out with like-minded people, right? You want to find your tribe. and you want to stick around with them because they are going to support you through this journey. And the last one, when it comes to purpose, is start thinking from the mentality of collaborating versus competing. And that happens a lot in the workplace, or even with neighbors. It can happen with neighbors in the community, whatever. Or even in network groups. I've seen it. I'm a member of a network group that's huge, and there's a lot of competition. But there's also collaboration. I choose to be part of the ones that collaborate with each other. And when you do that, and you are genuine about that action, then it becomes a reciprocal thing. And someone, if you support someone in their goals, right, and you're honest about that, someone down the line is going to support you in your goals, in reaching those goals. And that's what true networking is, right? You help each other instead of competing with each other. And the fourth step there is repetitive practice. Remember what I said, that the way the subconscious mind learns is by repetition. So in order to create new programs that override the old programs, repetition is going to be key. So steps 1, 2, and 3 is what you're going to repeat on a regular basis. And then you want to remember your future at least 2 or 3 times a day. And what I mean by that is step number 5, which I don't know if we're going to have time to do, but at least I'm going to show it to you so you can go home and do it. And then you want to start consuming, ingesting wholesome impressions. Because in the same way the body needs food to be nurtured, the mind needs food. And the food of the mind is the impressions that you receive through your senses every single day. So start becoming mindful of those impressions, right? Maybe start watching inspiring movies instead of violent movies. Maybe some inspiring music. Or watch less negative news and engage in less negative conversations, right? And do some of the opposite. Because that is going to nurture your mind and your emotions. Wholesome activities. That's where meditation comes in. You see that I underlined it, right? Mm-hmm. Because these type of activities are going to help the mind, that bucket of murky water, the creative mind, it's going to help that murkiness settle so that you can begin to get clarity as to which direction, what's the next step that you need to take to start getting better results, right? And then that brings me to step number 5, which is attracting your future. And pretty much this is what step number 5 looks like. What I recommend that you do is that you take a piece of paper and draw this squiggly line circle around it, right? Make a circle. Inside the circle, write one single word that describes what your goal is. So if your goal is to get that better job or that career, or to develop that skill that you know is going to open up opportunities for you, or you want to start that business that you've been secretly thinking and dreaming about, whatever that is, make sure you write that word in the center of this circle. And then you're going to add your intention to your future. And here you want to be very, very specific. So these are your thoughts in relation to the new future that you want to create. And so now you want to be specific about the conditions of that goal, right? So now you want to say, I want to work from home, or I want to work from anywhere in the world. I want to make $100,000 a year or $500,000 a year, whatever it is. Make sure you stay within realistic goals. I want to be able to take at least 8 weeks of vacation per week. per year. I want to have this benefit packet because that'll be a nice perk. But most importantly, I want to love what I do. And this is the reason why your goal has to be in alignment with your purpose. Because if you want to love what you do, you got to start setting goals in alignment with your purpose. And then you bring in your altruistic why. Why you want to reach this goal, right? I want to help thousands of people through telecoaching. Whatever yours is, just fill it in. And then you're going to attach elevated emotions to it, right? Those are the feelings that are going to activate that intention. And so as you think about the conditions of your new job or your new career, start feeling the feelings that you would feel if you were the recipient of this, right? So how would you feel if you were already there? You would feel empowered, grateful, in love with life, right? Because now you're loving what you're doing. You want to feel deserving, abundant, joyful results, whatever those emotions are, you make sure you list them. And every day you put that on your nightstand. And when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you look at is this piece of paper. And now you're memorizing this picture, right? And then in the evening, when you come home from work, the last thing you want to look at when you go to bed is this picture. And if you can do it throughout the day, even better. So now this picture is in your mind. And every time you're probably at work doing something and bam, the picture shows up. The moment that picture shows up, you're going to say with a big smile, right? It doesn't matter what people think that you're smiling. I am that. I am. I am that. I am. And that is going to be like when you seal something with a kiss. You know, the stamp that you're putting on your intention is that last phrase. I am that. I am. And this is how you go about creating different results in your life. Or at least this is one way that I have found to start creating different results in your life. All right? So, if there are any questions, we're probably not going to have time for it. But I'm so sorry. But this is what I'm going to do. Sorry about that guy. But this is what I want to do about this. Remember I mentioned that I had a gift for you at the end of the presentation? So here's the gift. And it actually skipped it.
Skip the gift?
I am willing to give you 3 weeks of group coaching sessions between now and the end of the month. And these coaching sessions happen every Wednesday at 7:30 via Zoom. Remember, I'm a telecoach. So I coach people online. You never have to drive anywhere. We meet online, just like meeting face to face. We're looking at each other on the computer, right? It happens every Wednesday at 7:30 via Zoom. It lasts about an hour, and that's a value of approximately $150. You're going to get 3 of those for the rest of the month, for the rest of September. If you want to know more about the information that was presented here today. And then I am also going to send you a link so that you can schedule a one-on-one breakthrough session with me. And what that means is that there's no one else in the room. It's just you and I in the room. And we talk about your biggest challenge right now, and I will offer a roadmap that you can take so that you have a better idea of what your next step would be, right, to create your new future. And that is definitely first come, first serve, because that schedule kind of like gets busy pretty quick. But you have until September 30 to schedule that call. And it's up to an hour. It's a $100 value. And everything that I'm offering right now is totally free, no commitment. So if you want to learn more about what I presented today, what you can do is, if you have a business card, write the word freedom in the back and pass it forward to me. If you don't have any business cards or you don't want to provide your business information, I have these sign-up sheets. You can write your name and your email, and I will send you the link to access the group coaching sessions and the link to schedule the one-on-one session. And I will also email you that sheet that you were all taking a picture of. I can even email you the whole slide deck, all right? But it will be up to you. So with that said, I am sorry that I went over, but we kind of started a little bit late. And now, really, any questions, you can call me. I'm sorry.
And you covered a lot of material. Thank you.
It was a lot of material.